All right, good morning, everybody.
No, but it's crowded everywhere.
Good morning.
Have your attention. Good, thank you. Yes, some crowd response. I like that. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Ah, yeah, okay. Like a school teacher. All right. So this is the June Good Morning Truckee, and we have wildfire preparedness and mitigation updates. We're going to hear from Eric Horntvedt, the wildfire prevention manager with the Truckee Fire Department, James Blattler, the emergency services manager with the town of Truckee, Jonathan Cook Fisher, Tahoe National Forest District Ranger with the Truckee Ranger District, and Grayson Howard of the Truckee Donner Land Trust. As always, we'd like to thank our sponsors for Good Morning Truckee. The presenting sponsors are Kelly Brothers Painting, Tahoe Forest Healthcare System. Latte sponsors are the town of Truckee, PT Revolution, Schaefer's Mill, Golf, Ski, and Lake Club, Moonshine Inc., Tahoe Truckee Media, Truckee Tahoe Unified School District, Sierra Sun 101.5, Truckee Tahoe Radio, Porter Simon Law Offices, Auerbach Engineering, Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation, Goldring Travel, Boreal Mountain Resort and Woodward Tahoe, East River Public Relations and Marketing, JKAE, Tykert, and Trout Creek Outfitters. The espresso sponsors are Mountain Hardware and Sports, Mount Lincoln Construction Inc., Tahoe Dave's, Peak Digital Studio, Dixon Realty, LP Insurance Services, Contractors Association of Truckee Tahoe, Martis Valley Mobile Notary, Lift Co-work, Conference and Wellness Center. Thank you for all our sponsors. It is a mouthful. We appreciate all of you. Eventually, we'll just dispense with, okay. I'm always going to have to read it. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, all right. All right, we will go around the room. We'll start with me. I'm Raven Whittington. I'm an attorney at Porter Simon Law Firm. And how about we start with another lawyer, Ian.
Hi, I'm Ian. I'm with High West Law.
I'm Andrea Lackey Design. I'm Vivian Ruiz. I'm Executive Director for Sierra Senior Meals. So,
I'm Amber Burke, the Coordinator of District Communications and Parent Engagement for the school district, and I also sit on the Chamber Board.
I'm Jessica Penman. I'm the President and CEO of the Truckee Chamber.
She'll back here. Finish with you guys, the important people.
I'm Mike Rogers. I'm on the board of the Friends of the Truckee Library.
I'm Bella Brownwood, and I'm with the Sierra Business Council.
I'm Anna Klostad, dual representation today, School District Facilities Maintenance and Operation Director, and Town Council Member.
Tom Nill, Executive Director of HR and Risk for Sugar Bowl.
Jenny Kendrick with Discover PR and Marketing.
I'm Susan Jacobazzi. I'm an independent contractor. I work on communication in the workplace.
Rob,
Rob Ettenheimer, General Manager of the Truckee Tahoe Airport District. Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Thomas Smith. I'm the Field Battalion Chief for CAL FIRE, the Truckee North Tahoe Battalion.
Not related, Red Smith. Brand new full-time resident in Truckee, and I run a company called Sunfire Defense.
Welcome.
Amber, spelled A-M-B-E-R-A. I'm with Amber. Well, no, I'm not. I'm with Silent A Photography. Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you. Chris?
Chris Tennant, Mount Lincoln Construction, and Cat Ward.
Stackpole.
Erica Vedas, I'm the Forest Features Program Director at the Tahoe Truckee Community Foundation.
Thank you. Eric?
Eric Goldring Travel, and Raven, I love you mentioning me every time.
Thank you. I know who to play to, Eric.
I'm Jeff Nye with MEC Builds, based out of Grass Valley, home hardening, roofing, gutters, siding.
Thank you. Tricia?
Hi, I'm Tricia Stickney. I am the Membership and Programs Manager for the Truckee Chamber of Commerce.
Hi, I'm Melissa Williams. I'm Communications Manager for Truckee Chamber.
Hi, I'm April Cole. I'm the Executive Director for the Friends of the Truckee Library.
I'm Rhonda Carlson. I'm in charge of adult programming at the Truckee Library.
All right, Katie and Kathleen's table. Not Jim's, not Gerald's, not Ted's.
I'll start. Katie Schaefer, East River PR and Marketing Chamber Board.
Gerald Herrick, Truckee Fire Board, a.k.a. Santa.
Ted Owens, Tahoe Forest Health System and Land Trust Board.
Grayson Howard, Truckee Donner Land Trust.
Kathleen Egan, Friends of the Truckee Library Board, working with the community to bring a new library to Truckee.
And I received her call about midnight last night for dialing for dollars. Yeah. Jim Porter with Raven's law firm, and I just want, and I'm with the Tahoe Fund board, or I'm on the board, but take a look at the cuffs, they match the pants, the guy is doing it
Good
today.
job. Took all my style notes from you, Jim. Yeah. Are you working at a lumber yard today, or?
It's nice to have a microphone, isn't it?
60 years took it away from you finally, right? All right, right here.
Hello everybody, Luke Otterstead with Brush Pros. I'm the general manager and we do defensible space clearing. And I'm here with my son. You want to say what your name is?
My name is Ethan.
Ethan, and he's 8 years old.
Nice, welcome.
Good job.
Debbie Klett, Director of Operations for One at a Time. We provide families around the world access to clean drinking water.
Becky Brown, I'm on the board of the HOA for the Ponderosa Ranchos, Gerald's neighborlies.
All right.
Lynn Baumgartner, I'm the housing analyst for the town of Truckee.
Laura Burlingame, Town of Truckee.
Eric Horntvedt, Truckee Fire.
James Blattler, Town of Truckee Emergency Services Manager.
Jonathan Cook Fisher, District Ranger here in Truckee.
All right, did I forget anybody? Yes.
Bruce Lee with Infinite Defense Advisors and volunteer ambassadors from the chamber.
Okay, without further ado, we will go with Eric Horntvedt, who is the Wildfire Prevention Manager with Truckee Fire Department. Eric, thank you.
Wait.
Perfect. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Eric Horntvedt with Truckee Fire here to give you guys just a lightning fast update of our whole wildfire prevention division and what we have going on addressing wildfire risk in our communities. So we'll be talking about our defensible space program, home hardening, green waste disposal, some other education and assistance programs we have available in the communities, our wildfire prevention grant, our community wildfire protection plan, and some current and upcoming fuel reduction projects. Our team, this is our small but mighty team, so we work for the board, so Gerald back here is the big boss. Kevin McKechnie is our fire chief, we got an oversight committee, and then there's Dylan and I that manage the program, so I work as the manager, Dylan's our forester, we got 2 other full-time staff, and then this season we're really heavy with 7 defensible space specialists, so those 7 inspectors are really who you'll see driving the white Subarus around the neighborhoods working on defensible space. And so when I start, I usually have slides that really talk about how we got to where we are. And I think most people in this room have heard that, right? Our forests being logged, then having fire suppression, coming back with overly dense forests and that. And really today I wanted to talk a little bit more about a community fire disaster sequence. And you know, what's unique is that just in the past 15 years, California has seen the vast majority of the largest, most destructive, and deadliest wildfires, right? And the problem is continuing to get worse, as we saw even with the way this calendar year started down in LA. And really what we're looking at is environmental conditions, right? We have this severe wildfire potential, this severe buildup of fuels or forest densification, overgrowth of shrubs. To make the matters worse, we've built our communities right in the middle of all these very high and high fire hazard areas. And then we're seeing extreme wildfire conditions too, right? LA saw almost 100-mile-an-hour winds lined up in Santa Ana's after, you know, kind of some unprecedented drought conditions. And we see similar things up here. And so our fire suppression system, even though it is mighty and we have great interagency relationships between local, state, and federal governments and a really rapid fire response system, when you have these environmental conditions and this accumulation of fuels combined with topography all line up for that worst day event, the suppression system will be overwhelmed, overtaxed, and not able to put out the fires the way we typically can. So what we can control is this box of community conditions. We can make our structures less vulnerable, right? We can take care of zone 0, structure hardening, community defensible space, working as fire-wise communities, taking care of those community fuel reduction zones, fuel treatment, forest management, and then the outcome is up to us. If we don't do all this work to address our community conditions, we will have an urban conflagration. If we address this as best as we can to really remove these hazards, reduce our risk, we can have a community that can survive a wildfire. So The goal of our division is this bottom right box. Let's get this community conditions right so that we can have a community that can survive wildfire. So with that, homes are igniting 3 different ways. I really want to focus you in on the picture on the left. About 90% of structure ignitions are a direct cause of embers, right? These small firebrands are either directly entering your home through inadequate vent screening, or more commonly, igniting something combustible next to your home. Think pine needles, and then a shrub, and then you get this fire pathway that leads to home ignition. The other 2 things that way homes can ignite is direct flame contact and radiant heat. So this is where defensible space comes in. If we can get the right plants in the right place with the right spacing, we can make it so that you don't have this fire pathway that connects to your home, and that we don't allow either direct flame or that heat you feel coming off the campfire get hot enough to impact a home. So keep that in mind while we're working around the communities. To really drive home the point of how we can change these community conditions, I like to go back to triangles. If anyone's ever been through any fire training, everything's just triangles. They keep it really simple, just 3 things at a time. But we have 2 fire triangles. One is the general fire triangle. These are the 3 things you need to sustain fire, and that's oxygen, heat, and fuel. So if you remove fuel out of the fire triangle, you got nothing to burn. So that's what we're managing around our community, right? The pine needles, the shrubs, the trees, that's our fuel. When you look at the fire behavior triangle, or what factors drive or increase fire severity, intensity, spread, size, you're looking at weather, so how hot and dry and windy is it? You're looking at topography, right? We all know steeper slopes drive fire behavior. And then again, back to fuel. So what's the common denominator in these 2 triangles is that we can control fuel, right? So if we manage our appropriate forests in our good defensible space, couple it with home hardening, we can do our best to remove fuel out of these 2 triangles and get ourselves into a resilient community. So with that, we'll dig into our defensible space program. So we have a really robust inspection program. We're doing about 5,000 inspections annually. Tahoe Donner is self-inspecting another 1,000 homes annually, and we have many HOAs in the fire district that are also doing their own HOA-led inspections. So there's a lot of work going on. If you're interested in defensible space, we have 10 appointments every day, Monday through Friday, and you can have one of our defensible space specialists come out to your property for free, educate you on defensible space, home hardening, and learn about all the programs and resources we have available to assist with this big effort. So for this year, we're actually shifting into re-inspection. So our first cycle under Measure T was in 2022. We've inspected 15,000 homes over the last 3 years. And this year, we're getting back into communities that we inspected in 2022. So I'm excited to measure and demonstrate the change, right? Show all the good progress, give a good kudos to the community for all the work that has been taking place, and then also make sure we're still refocusing our efforts where we can address defensible space in our communities. This is our nice long linear fire district. So we extend from Cisco Grove or the Highway 20 area on the western side all the way through all of our Donner Summit communities, all of Truckee, and over to Florestan. So this is just our map of all of our inspection areas and what year they were all inspected. But for this year, these are our target areas. We've already completed the southern third of Glenshire. We'll be moving into Olympic Heights, Prosser Lakeview and Estates, Armstrong Tract, and then all of Donner Lake. So raise your hand if you live in any of these communities. Cool, so we got a handful of people in this room that'll be engaging with our inspection program, which is great. Quick one, how do we conduct our inspections, right? I think this one's commonly missed is that, we really start with the public roadways. So when we're doing our programs, our inspectors are actually walking the public spaces. They're walking the streets in the pathway that the Amazon driver takes to your front door. It's reasonable access, right? We don't have full access to a property unless that's granted either verbally at time of inspection or written from a property owner. So we're really working from the street, working from that pathway to the front door, evaluating what we can see in plain view. We're using a pretty cool high-tech inspection software, so we are taking a lot of point data, pictures, and really producing a digital report that's easy to see, understand, and know what work needs to be done around the property. How many of you have seen one of these on your front door or in the mail? Cool, more people, that's great to see. So these are the two ways we communicate our inspections. The picture on the left, That's our door hanger. So that's our normal go-to, right? We complete our inspection, we write your unique access code on it to access the report online, leave it at the door with a little checklist of what's next and what you can do to prepare your home for wildfire. If you don't log in and access your report within 2 weeks, don't do that. Please go look at your report. But you get this cool little mailer. So this is our friendly way of trying to say that your defensible space report is ready. Has a nice postcard vibe, and it drives a lot more access. We actually went from about a 65 to 70% inspection open rate, and with this postcard, we're getting up into the 80 to 90% rate. So we're having really good involvement from our community, which is awesome. We're also doing a bunch of communications. I know ERPR helps us with some of these too, and we're always working to improve it. But we're using, our website, newspapers, radio, social media, Firewise communities, public events. Really trying to make sure we're available for the community and sharing this information. New for this year, we came up with a better process for trying to get out pre-inspection emails, so really notifying our Firewise leaders or our HOA representatives to help share the message that, hey, Truckee Fire will be coming to your neighborhood in a couple weeks. And then we're going to also start doing post-inspection emails, so actually summarize, aggregate our inspection data. Hey, here's the top 10 defensible space issues, top 10 home hardening issues, quick recap of all the programs we have available, and really try to encourage our communities to keep pushing the messaging and getting the work done. So really quick, defensible space, we're going to talk about the zones. How many people have heard of Zone 0? Almost everyone, great. So Zone 0 is really important, right? This really is your house and the first 5 feet around it. And going back to our early slides, if we can address that ember ignition issue, homes that have Zone 0 done right, which means nothing combustible in that zone, no items, no combustible plants, any of those type of things, you double the likelihood that your home survives wildfire. And that's great data that's came out of IBHS and CAL FIRE's post-damage inspections after wildfire disasters. So if we get just this small but crucial zone right, we double the likelihood of homes surviving a wildfire. These are what we're seeing in Zone 0 around Truckee. We're seeing a lot of tree limbs overhanging or touching the structure. A lot of high fire risk vegetation and shrubs, and I say high fire risk because we're trying to work with the community on managing vegetation in Zone 0. So we're still finding a lot of manzanita, huckleberry oak, tobacco brush, right? Our shrubs that evolved for millennia burning from wildfire. So we need to really remove these high fire risk shrubs from Zone 0. Of course, a ton of leaves and pine needles, right, that constantly need to be managed throughout the fire season. And then the other big one is lumber, building materials, and other combustible items. It's getting to the point where gone are the days that we can say you can keep your wood pile and just cover it with an ember-resistant tarp. We really need wood piles moved 30 feet away from homes during fire season, or get creative and build a very, non-combustible, ember-tight, storage building underneath your deck to store it in, and then we can't see it. So there's your pro tip from Truckee Fire. As you move away from the house, we can get a little more reasonable, right? So as we work into Zone 1, this 5 to 30 foot area, we're really thinking lean, clean, and green, right? So this area, no dead material. We're picking up the twigs and the sticks, maybe just a light cover of pine needles or wood chips if you're using those. We're really having good spacing between our shrubs and our trees and keeping our limbs up above the ground, and that everything we have in this zone is probably being managed to be either irrigated or spaced in a way that it's staying lean, clean, and very green. Here's the message for Zone 1. We got to grapple with this, right? Don't be dense. We need to thin our trees. So especially in this 30-foot area from the house, we really do need to work to get some spacing back between trees. So as you see close to the home in this little picture, big trees are great. They're really fire resilient. Let's keep those, right? They've got a little bit of spacing from the limbs, the trees there, but we don't want to let the picture you see on the right, all these smaller trees occupying the same space. This is where we really need to get back to a well-thinned and well-spaced forest near our homes. As we work farther out, we're really just reducing fuel. So we're trying to get back that spacing that we talked about earlier, maybe a little bit more lenient than we are with Zone 1, but just make sure that the zone's well managed. A unique thing in this picture, it shows you the reality of our communities, is when we do defensible space, Our laws in California and what we've learned from fire say we need at least 100 feet. That's the minimum requirement of defensible space in these areas. The challenge is that that goes across property lines. So our inspections always focus you within just the land that you own and control, right? We can't ask or require you to do work on your neighbor's property, but we do inspect all properties in our neighborhood so we can really work towards that community defensible space goal across properties. So my goal is talk to your neighbors, send a letter to a vacant lot if you have one, work with your Firewise communities. Let's do what we can to apply these defensible space things throughout the whole community. So here's some great stats. We're using a pretty in-depth software so we can pull really customizable data and reports. This is like one you do in 30 seconds. But after 15,000 inspections across 12,000 properties in the last 3 years, we found out that 9 out of 10 homes have more work to do, meaning that they haven't completed all of their defensible space action items. And these are the top things we're seeing. It's tree spacing, tree limbing, tree limbs overhanging the structure, vegetation in zone 0, and the need for more, tree and shrub spacing. And so as we work this year with inspections, we're hopefully working to give more kudos for all the work and progress that's been done, show that improved progress to the communities, and then really focus back in on getting the rest of this work completed. So, I think my goal is I would love it to see that when I come back up here in 3 more years after we hit another inspection that we're at least to like 5 out of 10 homes have got the work done, and we're getting closer, to that 75 to 80% compliance rate, which is kind of our ultimate baseline goal to get to, maintain, and improve. So here's a quick overview of everything that goes down with our inspection program. Is that not only do we do inspections, but we also do free green waste pickup, 6-yard dumpsters, Firewise work days, home hardening rebates, reflective address signs, and then coming up later this summer will be a dead tree fund. I explain our programs, a lot of this is Truckee has a green waste buffet. There is nowhere else in California that has aligned local fire district, town, Keep Truckee Green, and county programs to give this suite of green waste disposal than what Truckee has, right? Not only do you have yard waste carts in your front yard, you can pile all of your branches and tree limbs and trees up to 8 inches in diameter, that Shaka is the quick 8-inch caliper, right on the curb, schedule it online, we pick it up for no additional cost. You can also get 6-yard dumpster rebates, 30-yard dumpsters for work days, free drop-off events, 6 yards self-free haul to the ERL. So if you're not in the green waste business as a resident here, you're missing out on a ton of free and good community work. So here's all those green waste events summarized. We got a whole lot of them. So take advantage. Upcoming is our June 28th Truckee Rodeo Grounds drop-off event and the July 11th. So if you're interested with maybe a lot of pine needles or things that you can't get rid of with our curbside green waste program, bring them on out, free drop-off. These are great events to get rid of the material. New for this year is we upped our home hardening rebate to $2,000 per property. So if you're working on things like replacing vent screening, replacing the first 5 feet of attached fences with a non-combustible metal or cement style of fence, decks, tarps, eaves, windows, any of these home hardening pieces, we'll cover 50% of the material and or contractor costs up to $2,000 per property. So hopefully as we're giving out those compliant, defensible space inspections, working towards that goal of 80% defensible space compliance, everyone that's done great on defensible space now has a new thing they can do, and that's home hardening. So we're going to try to really keep this effort going. Cool. And all this information's on our website too. So if you get to truckeefire.org, we have a whole wildfire prevention tab with drop downs for each of these programs, which is great. This is just another guide here of what the home hardening looks like, right? But it's really looking at the home. The challenge here is that if your house was built 2008 or newer, you likely comply with most of these. If your house was built prior to 2008, which most of our homes here are like 70s, 80s, and 90s, then you have a tremendous opportunity for home hardening. New this year was a reflective address sign. This is kind of unique. We set this program up that our team will prepare a custom reflective address sign as you see pictured here. The catch is that you have to engage in person with us. So it either needs to be during a defensible space inspection or at any of the in-person events that we have going on. So that could be things like Truckee Day, Truckee Thursdays will be downtown, farmers markets, or any of the Firewise events. I think we're doing about 20 to 30 of them this year that our communities organize and invite us to. So if you want a free reflective address sign, show your community that you've engaged in person with Truckee Fire, there it is. I'm not going to share too much info with this. This program still, we're getting it developed and ready to pilot out. But likely by, hopefully end of July, we want to launch a pilot for a dead tree fund. This program's a little challenging because dead trees are the responsibility of the property owner to remove. And we want to build out a program that is more needs-based. But we're going to try to keep it that Truckee way, where needs-based doesn't mean you have to be like 75% of the area median income. It's more, let us know that you need financial assistance with removing dead trees on your property, and then we'll build out a more streamlined program that can either provide, ideally, a rebate back to a property owner, and then if they really need assistance, then we can maybe cover 100% of the cost. So we'll be kind of furloughing that program out and getting that launched to the community. Another really cool event we have going on is that we've partnered up with the school district in SWEP, and we've combined education in the classroom with some workday volunteerism of our students. So this program's great. If anyone is in an HOA or Firewise community and you have someone, all they need to do is check the box. This property needs help doing defensible space, right? They're elderly, they can't do the work, they're on a fixed income. We're not gonna make it like a challenging application process. Just you let us know, or we're gonna help identify these properties during our inspections. We keep a list of these properties, and then we get the opportunity to go into the classroom, educate our students on wildfire prevention and defensible space and forestry management, and then go take a property from ready to burn to pretty dang resilient in like a 2-hour period. It's awesome. We've filled like 60-yard 2 dumpsters, usually in less than an hour when we get, a couple classrooms with 30 or 40 students out there. So really cool, feel-good program. It really makes, our property owners that need the help, they have all teared up and want to hug the kids and send us all letters. So it's been a great way to get out with the students. All right, coming up for forest management projects. I wish I had a map, but if you go to truckeefire.org/projects, there's maps of everything there. But we have 3 projects that we're wrapping up. So those were the Armstrong Tract Fuels Reduction Project, Sierra Meadows, and Martis Peak Roadside. So that's about 300 acres or over $1 million at work with some combined funding from the Airport District and Measure T that we are going to have completed by the end of July. And then right now, we actually just released our bid document. We got a 500-acre project coming up in Glenshire. So we're going to be working in the Canyon Springs and Glenshire to Hirschdale area. So this is going to be a really large, really visible project, but really important for forest health, wildfire resilience, defensible space enhancement, and securing that main egress route of that steep section of Glenshire Drive down to I-80. So we hope that we have our contractor starting in August on this project. We'll be doing a lot more community outreach and education and communications on this project, but it's going to be a big one. And this project was great too. We were able to combine a grant from Truckee Airport District, Measure T, and Land Trust funding. And we're anticipating this single project to be probably somewhere in the $1.5 to $2 million ballpark, all said and done. So it'll be a good one. We also, tapping our forester on the back here, we pulled together an awesome partnership with the help from a lot of our agencies, the Land Trust, Martis Camp, Vail, Land Trust, everyone, and we were actually successful in getting $1 million of local cash match from our partners and pulling down a $7 million grant from CAL FIRE's Forest Health Program. So we have some projects kicking off this year. There's actually licensed timber operator working in log trucks going out of Martis Camp right now, which is exciting to see, those areas outside of Martis Camp getting good forest health treatments. But we're going to have about 2,700 acres being treated outside of our communities, right? So as Measure T is really working from the inside out, we're using these partnerships and grant dollars to work on the outside back in on forest health. And then we're already planning out our next 1,000 acres of fuel treatments. And so we're looking at central Truckee Wooey, which is the whole big hill where we had the fire last year. We really want to get that hillside right. And then we also want to connect the Cabin Creek project that was done by the Forest Service and NFF. We want to get the private property and the recently acquired Land Trust property from Jackass Point through the Union Pacific Railroad into that Deerfield Shopping Center completed within the next couple of years as well. So just to give you an idea of where we're headed. So here's a map of some of those main projects. This one up in the top right is our big Glenshire to Hurstdale project. And then this was our Armstrong projects that we're finishing up here that I'm circling. And then Sierra Meadows, we got a lot of the community treatment work done. Another cool way that we're spending Measure T is we're letting the community bring their projects to us. So this year we had $550,000 in Measure T available for grants. We received 9 applications, over $1.5 million in asks, and we're going to be awarding 4 of those grants tonight at our board meeting. So if anyone wants to hear about awarding grants at a board meeting, come join Truckee Fire at our board meeting tonight. 1 minute, perfect. Here's a great example going back to my first slide of why we need to get this work done, right? When you see a fire spread, our untreated areas, they're in a condition that everything burns. Everything's connected, it burns with high intensity. And then when you get into our treated areas, you can see it takes some time for it to absorb that heat and that intensity, get back on the surface, and then we can maintain a healthy, green, functioning forest. So great example with a couple pictures of why we need to keep going heavy on this forest management, community, and ultimately prescribed burning work within our forests here in Truckee. Last slide is that we're going to be going into our burn ban season soon. So those of you that know, when this comes up, we'll be looking at only gas fire pits, barbecues, and wood pellet smokers. No more charcoal or wood once we go into the burn ban. This typically always happens by 4th of July, so expect similar timing this year. And with that, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Eric. Oh, James, you go ahead.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll jump right in. See if I can figure it out. All right. Last time I was here, I got the hook, so I'm gonna make sure I keep the time tight. And really excited to be here. I think it's good to sandwich me in between the fire district and the Forest Service. They're talking a lot about mitigation, and which is really critically important, which is very important to make sure what I'm going to talk about mostly today, which is evacuations, isn't necessary, but the planning for it is very necessary. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Truckee OES overview, Office of Emergency Services. We love acronyms in this industry, and evacuation planning and protocols. So first and foremost, a lot of the work we do in the Office of Emergency Services is guided by the Council priorities. And one of those is enhancing partnerships and investment for emergency preparedness with a particular focus on wildfire readiness and mitigation. And so we carry that work out through the emergency management phases, the 4 phases of emergency management. Mitigation, which you are hearing a lot about today, and we really help support where we can. But the majority of our work falls in the preparedness area, so that way we're really ready to respond and support the incident when it's needed and help the community recover from that incident. So, wanted to highlight some of the really cool evacuation planning tools that we have here at the town of Truckee. The town is really heavily invested in some industry-leading tools and technology to help support the work that we're doing. And one of the first and foremost tools that we've been using for quite a while, it's called Ladris, and it was actually developed by a couple local Nevada County residents. Really incredibly smart couple of guys that put their heads together and made an evacuation modeling software tool that is now really widely used in the western United States for evacuations, and I believe Hawaii now as well. Which I guess is very western United States. But one of the really cool things about this is we're able to control a number of inputs to help estimate how long it might take to evacuate a certain area. And that's really particularly helpful in Truckee, where we have a significant number of visitors that come up and second homeowners. One of the examples I use a lot is Tahoe Donner, where you have 6,300 plus homes, but maybe 20% of those are permanently occupied, and so those numbers of who might be in Tahoe Donner can fluctuate pretty significantly based on maybe there's a holiday event, or just given during the summertime, you might have some peak seasonal travel levels, and there's only 2 ways in and out of Tahoe Donner. And so having the ability to understand how long it might take to evacuate is really critically important, so we know when to kind of push that button and get the people moving, so that way we can get people out of harm's way if we have time. One of those big examples is Caldor Fire that we saw down the impacted South Lake Tahoe. That fire was marching for several days, and they had indications that it's going to reach South Lake Tahoe. So understanding how long we'd really need to evacuate is really important. Fire modeling is getting way better every year. And so one of the really neat things that I wanted to share of a tool that all of California has is Cal OES has a program. It's called the FIRUS program. I wish I remember the total acronym of it, but I think Chief Smith might be aware, so he can chime in if he's got it. But essentially what we've got is that Cal OES owns some airplanes. I believe this program started out of Orange County. They get launched and they're flying out of, I believe, the Sacramento area. And whenever you have a new fire start, that airplane is over that fire. It has infrared technology that it can map the perimeter of that fire. It takes that map, sends it over to some GIS analysts down, I believe, in the San Diego area. They take that data, input the topography, the weather, the current weather, the expected weather, and they spit out some fire modeling. And then they instantly can shoot it back to the incident command post and give you an indication on, hey, this is where we think this fire is going to burn in the next 30 minutes, 1 hour, 3 hours, 6 hours. And so you put those two tools together with the evacuation software, and that really helps us make a decision on where and when we need to evacuate. The license plate readers is a really interesting one. So license plate readers were really created more of a law enforcement focus, where you have cameras around that can detect license plate numbers, and if that license plate is associated with a crime, it can ping the local law enforcement agency. Well, what we've discovered is that new technology can also anonymize that data for that license plate and count that vehicle on how often it travels past a certain camera. And so old school ways how we used to count vehicles, and it's still used a ton today, are those little air tubes that go across the road. Well, that air tube's going to catch a vehicle if I decide I need to drop my kids off at school, and then I come home, and then I go to the grocery store, come home, go pick them up, come home, go to soccer, come home. Well, my vehicle's been counted a number of times, where this license plate reader can now know that there's only one unique license plate associated with my vehicle, and it'll only count me once for that 24-hour period. So that's really helpful in understanding, what are those inputs for the evacuation software. And finally, I will highlight the zone-based evacuations. I strongly recommend everybody knows their evacuation zone. That's a really helpful tool, both on the incident command level on making quick decisions on where to evacuate, but also to be able to communicate with the public from a public information standpoint and say, hey, here are the zones. You can quickly access it online. If you know your zone ahead of time and you hear that zone's evacuated, you can go ahead and leave without checking, and it provides up-to-date information. That platform is the first thing we update when we have evacuation warnings or orders, so very, very useful tool. And then real quick, I wanted to highlight where we are today. So we have been sitting on a draft evacuation plan for a number of years. Very happy to say that the ink on that plan is now dried. It's just a couple weeks ago, we were able to get that out to all these partner agencies. I believe there's 15 different signatures on this plan, which really shows how much support and review that went into this plan to make it a really valid and strong plan. That said, it's not final. Once it's signed, it's an iterative plan. So anytime we have the opportunity to improve it, we will. But one thing that I wanted to show you what comes out of this plan is if you look on the screen, you'll see a bunch of colors over the town of Truckee. And in those colors, you see a bunch of lines. Those black lines are our Genesis, formerly Zone Haven, evacuation zones. Well, what we've done is, when you need to evacuate 1 or 2 zones, it's definitely a challenge and it's an impact. But where you really see the challenge in handling evacuations are those large-scale evacuations. And so what we've done is we've grouped a bunch of these pre-established evacuation zones into larger zones, and we're calling them evacuation management zones. And with each zone, we've developed what you see in the middle of your screen, kind of a one-page list of all the really important things that emergency responders need to know about that zone, about how many households or structures are within that zone. What do those populations look like in the daytime, nighttime? How many vehicles might you be looking at? What are some of those really special consideration facilities within that zone? You know, maybe you have high density housing where mobility might be a challenge. Maybe healthcare facilities, schools, things like that. And then also with that are your priority traffic control points, secondary traffic control points, and your kind of tertiary traffic control points, and which will be staffed as resources allow. And so with that, it also provides some resources that you'd minimally want to have in place to be able to staff those traffic control points. And then in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, that's a snapshot of what those traffic control points likely will look like, which really can help those first responders and public works crews quickly set up a traffic control point to expedite the flow of traffic out of the evacuation area. And so these are tools, right, that even though we've got these plans in place, wildfires are very dynamic, they change, and they require a lot of times change in operations. But this provides a really strong foundation for us to be able to quickly get into action and get people out of harm's way. So lastly, I'll just go over quickly the evacuation process. I think it's important for everybody to understand what that looks like. First and foremost, California is really standardizing terminology with evacuations. It used to be every agency used something different. We're working to change that to avoid confusion. We still have a problem in the Western United States. The state of Oregon uses something completely different. They call it Ready, Set, Go, level 1, 2, 3, which can be confusing if you're not used to that. Or if people come down from Oregon and come to California, might not recognize ours. We have evacuation warning and evacuation order. Warning means there's a potential threat to life. The past fire last year behind Safeway resulted in several evacuation warnings. The firefighters were very confident they'd be able to keep that contained in the area that it was burning, but we were ready to elevate that to evacuation order if conditions changed. Now, an evacuation order is a lawful order to evacuate. However, we can't force anybody to leave their homes. We strongly recommend it because it risks your own safety and the safety of the first responders and other people that might really need help trying to evacuate. But if you're out of that evacuation order zone, we can prevent you from getting back in. So that's important to know. So just as a process real quick, you know, that wildfire goes off, incident command comes, arrives at scene, does an assessment on what that wildfire looks like, makes a decision whether evacuations may be necessary, determine if they are necessary. That's when we turn into the alert and warning component. That's when incident commanders will lean on Office of Emergency Services to help send out those code red alerts, also wireless emergency alerts. And then that's after everybody's gotten notified. There's also door-to-door going on with our law enforcement personnel. High-low siren, if you haven't heard that, it's a European siren that's relatively new in the state of California. It's only used during evacuations. So if you hear that high-low European type siren that you're used to hearing, that means it's time to go. It's not somebody messing around, most likely. So keep an ear out for that. And then the evacuation happens. So that's when we're trying to move into that traffic control the best that we can. If there's mobility challenges and we have enough time, similar to the Caldor fire, we're going to execute our mass evacuation mobility plan, where we're going to leverage a lot of our existing resources at the town and partner agency resources like the school district with buses to help move people out of harm's way. And primarily, we're going to be initially setting up a temporary evacuation point, which is a place that we tell people to go that we know is safe until we figure out, hey, are these evacuations going to be overnight? In which case, we're going to work to secure an overnight shelter. Or if the incident commanders are pretty confident that they're going to be able to wrap that fire up and return people to their homes that evening, then we'll probably keep people at that temporary evacuation point and then have a liaison there on site, communicate with those people and let them know what's going on and let them home as soon as they can. The final number is number 4 up there, repopulation. That is one of the most challenging things to go through as an evacuee because you're starved for information. You want to get back home, and information from what I've seen all throughout the state can be very scarce during that time. You have the incident command teams will come in very hyper focused on trying to mitigate that fire and put that fire out while dealing with a lot of the information demands. And so unfortunately what we've seen is that there can be kind of a lag on the repopulation side, but that's improving. And so really we'll be working at the town of Truckee, coordinating with if an incident command team does come in to help manage a fire, to help push that information out and help set up whether it's a town hall or some sort of informational site, so that way residents that are evacuated can get that information as quickly as possible. And that's it. I hope I don't have that hook right over there that's about to pull me off, but thank you so much.
Does anybody have questions for James?
I have a question. I live in Placer County.
Yes.
So how do you coordinate with Placer County and the town of Truckee in terms of the evacuations?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So Placer County and Nevada County and town of Truckee, we use different systems for evacuation. So we use the zone-based evacuations. Placer County does not. Another difference is that we use code red alerts here on the north side of the border of Placer, Nevada County, and on the south side in Placer County they use called Placer alerts, which their platform is called Everbridge. And so there's a couple key things there. For the notifications, if you're a Placer County resident, you need to sign up for Placer alerts. And there's a great way to do that. You can go to TahoeAlerts.com, you enter your address, and that'll bring you to the site. Now, when it comes to coordination, we are very highly coordinated with Placer County. This whole region is very coordinated. There's an annual incident command, unified command exercise that goes on that we make sure that our approach is unified. And so instantly, if there's a wildfire that we know is going to potentially impact both sides, we'll get together with CAL FIRE. That's part of their jurisdiction. There's also fire districts here, and then we also have Placer County Sheriff, which will marry up with Nevada County Sheriff, Truckee Police Department, and we'll all be behind that truck trying to work on the best plan to protect the community. We don't really care if you're a Placer County resident or a Truckee resident or a Nevada County resident. We want everybody's safety, and we work together to do that. But it is important to know, if you're in Placer County, you're not going to have that zone right now. It's not there. And so they will create those zones on the fly. I personally really like the zone-based evacuations. I've seen it both sides of it, but I will say that Placer County is very capable at what they do with the system that they use, and they train to it, and so they're really good with it. And so there are differences. It's important to know that, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Hopefully I answered your question.
Where's the best place to find your evacuation zone?
So if you go to townoftruckee.gov/ready, you'll be able to get to that very easily. There's also Genesis Protect. They have a great app and web platform. So if you Google or search, for those that don't use Google, you can just go online, Genesis Protect, and you can search. It'll bring you to a web page where you can enter your address and it'll tell you your zone. The app is really cool too, because what it does, if you enable your notifications on the app, the second a change is made to the zone that you sign up for notifications for, you'll get a push alert on your phone. So I mentioned before, that's the first thing we do, is update the zones if we have evacuation warnings or orders. So what I will do is I'll go in there, change that zone. The second I do that, you'll receive a notification well before I go into code red, start putting that message in and push it out. So if you have the app, you can get notified a lot sooner of the information as opposed to not having it. We have one more question and then go ahead.
What about people who are like staying in an Airbnb or a visitor? How they may not be?
Yeah, so we always push, and especially for those short-term rentals, we try to share the information on. Hopefully, they share it with their visitors that come through on signing up for Code Red. However, we know that percentage of people is probably going to be really low. We highly rely on the integrated public alert and warning system through FEMA. So wireless emergency alerts. That's those Amber alerts that you get on your phone. We have the ability to push those out as well. We'll only use that when there's an evacuation order or an immediate life threat, but we have that tool Know that it's not 100% though. It doesn't always reach every single foam when we push it out, and it could be impacted by infrastructure damage for a wildfire or power outages if those cell towers aren't backed up by backup generation power. All right, and I'll be around. Sorry, unless, I don't know, timing wise, I think that might be the last question, but I'll be around and I'd be happy to answer them at the end of the day.
Thanks, James.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. All right, up next we have Jonathan Cook Fisher, the District Ranger with the Truckee Ranger District.
How much time? We'll leave some for questions.
You have until 9:15.
9:15, perfect. Good morning, Chuck.
Good morning.
Eric's presentation made me think of a couple things before I get into my presentation, which is if your neighbor happens to be the national forest.
Mic is off.
Good morning, Truckee. If your neighbor happens to be the national forest and you'd like to do defensible space out to 100 feet, I can issue a free permit to do that. So you just come to the ranger station, we can issue that. It's been sort of ramping up now that people are getting the word out. So we would really recommend that if it's something you're interested in. And the other thing that Eric brought up was sort of this fire debt we have and how we got into the current situation. Just over the last couple weeks, we've had hundreds of lightning strikes here in Truckee. We've had 6 starts. And I often reflect back on, that's one storm in just a very short period. What would this landscape have looked like over 20 million years of lightning fires? And it would have looked completely different. We would have had much fewer trees, much larger trees, and much greater spacing. And that's ultimately what we're trying to get to, is a more natural range of variation, less density, and a healthier forest. But on these 6 fires that we recently suppressed, if we're saying that fire is good and we need more fire, then why are we still suppressing? At the end of the day, it's because the forest is not in a condition to accept natural ignition fires yet. We still have this huge delta between what we want the forest to look like and what the forest current conditions are. And so what the projects I'm going to talk about today are basically our attempt to get forests back to a state in which we can introduce fire. Because at the end of the day, we're not going to ever have enough money to just keep doing mechanical treatment to get this landscape back to a more natural state. We have to get to a point, even if it's not our generation, maybe it's the young boy over here, but we need to get to a state in which prescribed fire and fire starts are what's helping keep these places cleaner and more natural. Here we go. The big initiative here in Truckee is the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership. This is 5 organizations that are more or less aligned in what we're trying to achieve. It includes the Nature Conservancy, the Watershed Council, I'm sure many of you know, Truckee Meadows Water Authority, that's the water purveyor out of Sparks in Reno, Nevada, National Forest Foundation, and the Forest Service. And so what we've done is we've tried to create a working collaborative in which we're aligning our efforts. And our goal is to treat 60,000 acres in the Truckee River watershed over the next 10 years. We've had some good starts, but this is expensive work. 2024 is our first full year of operations. We've done over 2,000 acres of fuels work. Then you can read the stats here. Bottom line figure is we've raised over $5 million. Much of that has come from the state of California. It's cap and trade program through the Wildlife Conservation Board. And so we continue to fundraise and seek funding to achieve these projects. 60,000 acres includes both Sierraville, the district north of Stampede, and the Truckee Ranger District. It's mostly, though, in the Truckee Ranger District. So these are the projects we've identified in the northern portion. Ladybug has mostly been implemented, but it needs additional work, including the reintroduction of fire. Alder 89, which takes place along Alder Creek. I wish I had a laser pointer, but you've got the Alder 89 project. This is going to kick off this August. So that was sold to SPI a couple years ago. And so they're hoping at this point to get in there in August of this year. It shouldn't impact the campgrounds that are on the east side of 89, but it's a little bit of wait and see on that. Other projects include Russell Valley. So Russell Valley is both a timber sale and a stewardship project. Boca is nearly complete in terms of its planning, and we're starting planning on these others. But bottom line is this, is we're focusing a lot around drinking water supplies and communities. So those are our first entries that we're hoping to achieve before we go out more into the general forested area. This is 89 North. 89 South is our most at-risk landscape, and it's most at risk because its density is some of the highest. We have almost zero recorded history of fire. So that goes back to what, 1870? This area should have at least received fire by now, and it's really out of whack. It's also critical because we have obviously 89, we've got private property, we have critical infrastructure, we have sewer lines, power lines, gas lines, right? This is the most at-risk corridor we have, which is why we kicked off the Five Creeks project. Five Creeks was then compartmentalized into Cabin Creek. That's the one that shut down the Jackass Trail system last summer. It's been since reopened up, but the contractor is starting again on Monday. The trails will be open, but the area south of the road that folks ride up to get to the trails, that's going to represent the closure boundary. So mastication kicks off again on Monday. Logging will start again on Wednesday. Once we're done with the Cabin Creek portion, then we're going to move to Big Chief. And that's going to be the area south of where we did the Big Jack East project and where we had goats last summer. So that area south of there is Big Chief. Deep Creek is going to be some really technical terrain. The road system, which is critical for our timber work, really doesn't exist very well in Deep Creek. So that one's going to be complicated. But that's where we're going to go after Big Chief. And then Alpine Meadows should also kick off this summer as well, and that's going to help the community of Alpine Meadows. We have a good neighbor agreement with Nevada County in which we are treating along the road system out in the general forest. So we can treat almost 200 miles of road here in Truckee, and by treatment I mean we can thin out to about 100 feet on either side of the roads. So that's going to provide for safer ingress and egress. It's also going to help us in the event we do need to suppress fire, because we're going to have this road system that really represents great anchor points. We tend to stop fires at roads and ridges, right? Roads, ridges, and rivers. Those are great anchor points for us. And so having a road system that's already pre-treated for suppression is going to be fantastic for the community. And this is an example of what that roadside treatment looks like. This was out near Boca Dam. Ideally, on all of our projects, we remove the timber. Often that has a commercial value. It goes to a mill where we have mill capacity or where it can pay for itself. Sometimes we actually have to pay to remove the material because the value isn't there. We then come in and masticate the brush, and then ideally we burn it. And so this was some burning we did out at Boca. On the roadside project, in a perfect world, we would have all of the mastication along roads completed, and then we would burn strips along these roads. That would represent just an incredible suppression tack for all of us, because it'd be pre-treated. Fire would essentially stop at that point. But prescribed fire windows up here are very narrow, and having the right resources to do it can be very challenging. So we're not getting to this to the same extent I wish we could. Had to throw in a picture of the goats. We will continue to experiment with goats where it makes sense. Now, we of course host here in Truckee about 4,000 head of sheep annually. We see those out by the reservoirs. They'll be back again this year, but the goats were specific to that area in the Big Jack East project. We were really trying to drive down the brush component there, because it had been almost 3 years since we went in the first time. And the brush needed to be knocked down because I wanted to get fire back into that landscape, but the brush had grown too much. And so we were experimenting with goats to see if that could help us get it to a point where we can just reintroduce fire. The goats were hit and miss. Above 6,000 feet, they can be pretty selective in what they want. They went after the sweet stuff. They left the manzanita and the white thorn and the small trees. So we'll continue to experiment, but I don't know if we're going to go after it in a big way. And then lastly, I will mention that we do retain, so there's been a lot of change in the Forest Service over the last few months in terms of some staffing levels or questions around staffing levels. From the fire side of the house, we have had little change in that staffing. We retained a Type 3 organization where we can manage kind of to the lower end of moderate complexity fires. And that's important for this area, just in case all of the incident management teams get ordered up or on national assignments or California-specific assignments. The Type 3 team was used on the Royal Fire, and a Type 3 team was used on the Bear Fire out by Loyalton last summer as well, at least for a good portion of time. I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions.
Has our corrupt president's budget and downsizing affected your agency locally?
So the only changes we've had locally from a staffing perspective have been folks in our campground program who've left. So we haven't had any impacts locally from any changes in budgets for this year. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Explain the prescribed burn fire window, because a lot of us see, oh man, the snow's off the ground. How come a prescribed burn isn't happening now? Why is it happening later? What is the window? What's some of the considerations?
The limitations are almost limitless at times. So the spring window, a couple complexities with spring. First, something as simple as it conflicts with our mandatory training for our new firefighters. So you have a solid month to 2 months in which you're bringing new hires simply up to speed for wildland firefighting. Another window could be, or another restriction could be, that with a spring fire, you have the potential to have to babysit that fire going into the heart of fire season. So at least in the fall, you know you can backstop that fire with snow and rain and cooler temperatures. And then finally, you want to strike the right balance of fire with green up. So you want enough fuel to carry the fire. You don't want necessarily for a tremendous amount of mortality. You don't want it to burn too hot. And so coming into green up can be a real challenge. So you've got to have the right crews with the right level of qualifications in the right location. And up here, that just, with the late snows that we get or the early rain, you know, it's a real balancing act. We were quite excited for our friends at CAL FIRE for the burning that they did, what, was that 2 weeks ago now? 2 weeks ago. That was great to see it in such a late season. Ideally, what we would have on the Forest Service are fuels modules. It would be a task force that was specific to prescribed fire. We just aren't staffed to that level yet as an agency to achieve that.
Is there a way to coordinate some of these communications? So the evacuation communications, the prescribed burns, because several times it's if you're at school, you're like, wow, we would have known that, probably wouldn't have gone out for recess. So it's not always it's really hard as a community member to figure out where to go to for some of these communications, not call the fire department.
It's really hard. Yeah, there's always work to be done on the communication side. We have long lists of notifications, email. We send messages out via newspaper, the electronic signage boards on the highways. All I can suggest to you right now is that if you do reach out to us, we can add your name to a notification list, and you will get an email sent to you the day of a prescribed fire, at least from the National Forest. And I'm not sure what CAL FIRE is doing.
We share that same email list between the fuels.
Yeah. So we share the same email list, at least with CAL FIRE.
I mean, it would be good to put TTUSD on it somewhere, at least to make
They're
sure.
on it.
Okay.
They are, yeah.
That isn't always open.
Yeah. Anything else?
Questions?
Yes.
What would it take to establish those fuels modules?
Money. Money. You need the crews. It's complicated. If you get trained in fuels and you get really proficient at it, what's your upward mobility? Or have you now developed a suite of skills in which, man, I'm a good firefighter. I can make twice the money though. Let me move over to suppression where I can go on teams and incidents, right? So we're humans. We want to raise families. We want to be successful. If we build a fuels organization, it needs to have the same level of opportunities and growth and training that we provide for the range of employees we have. But there's so many of our problems, it comes down to money.
Anybody else? All right, Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, up next we have Grayson Howard, who is the Communications Director for the Truckee Donner Land Trust. Welcome, Grayson.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Grayson. I work at the Truckee Donner Land Trust, and for those... There we go. My name is Grayson. I work for the Truckee Donner Land Trust, and for those of you who don't know us, we're your local land conservancy nonprofit. We've protected about 45,000 acres in the area, and we manage about 50 miles of trail. We have a campground, have a backcountry huts, and other fun stuff like that. As Eric mentioned earlier, we recently closed on about 110 acres on Jackass Ridge, and we are working on the southern half of the Donner Lake Rim Trail along Schellenberger Ridge is kind of our next big project. To dovetail into what we've been talking about today, we also work in forestry on our lands to be good neighbors and for the health of our forests. We're lucky enough to partner with pretty much everybody at this table, along with CAL FIRE and the Community Foundation and a couple state agencies, including the Sierra Nevada Conservancy and the Wildlife Conservation Board on forestry projects. And we look at the projects both from a wildfire resiliency perspective and an ecological perspective, since we are a conservation organization. So big projects we're working on right now, we have a lot going on up at Royal Gorge on Donner Summit. So for that area, we're looking at it both as the wildland urban interface for the Serene Lakes neighborhood, and for wildlife habitat up there, and for water source there at the headwaters of both the North Fork of the American River and the South Yuba River there. We're working up at Weber Lake, where we have our campground, on forestry and meadow encroachment, where some of the trees are kind of working their way into the meadow. We're thinning those back. And that's important because we have a campground there. There's opportunity for wildfire starts with people camping, but also that's the headwaters of the Little Truckee River that feeds into the middle Truckee River watershed. And then, as Eric also mentioned, we're working with them on Canyon Springs, which we recently acquired out in Glenshire, to improve the forests out there. With the Community Foundation, one of our other cool programs, just looking at community forest safety and fire safety, we have a hazard tree removal program up in Serene Lakes, where if a neighbor sees a hazard tree on our property out their backyard or neighboring their property, they can give us a call, and the Community Foundation has funded us in our ability to go and take care of those trees. So yeah, that's kind of what we're working on at the Land Trust for forestry, and stay tuned for some other exciting land acquisition projects coming up. Any questions?
Thank you, Grayson.
Thank you.
All right, we have time for a few questions. I have a big one just to the group in general, Jonathan. And as my mentor and good friend Jim would say, Raven, why are you always so negative? So here's the negative question. We all saw what happened in Malibu and LA, and it's like, okay, if that can burn, what the heck do we do here in Truckee? We don't have the Santa Ana winds, and we have you guys, so we're winning there, but is that just so catastrophic and there's just nothing you can do? Broad question. But how are we uniquely situated to be more prepared than somebody like Malibu?
Well, happy Tuesday.
Of course, those winds, right? Those winds were unbelievable. And so a wind-driven fire of that nature it's hard to it's apples and oranges to what our normal prevailing wind pattern is here. I mean, they had gusts of what, 100 miles an hour?
Yeah.
When you're talking about hurricane force winds driving fire, and homes are a fuels type, especially homes of that genre in those neighborhoods. So they're not just homes, these are shingled homes built in the probably 40s and 50s, no defensible space. In the canyons of LA, it's more mountainous than people realize, or hilly, plus the potential for arson. What we're doing here is we're treating the primary fuel source, which is our brush and our timber component. We've got great holding features and some good terrain for firefighting, other than, I would say, the west side of Truckee. And I think we're doing as agencies, as your government, pretty much all we can do to cooperate at the state, local, and federal level to prevent something like that.
Excellent.
And I would say a lot of the responsibility isn't just who's at this table. It's every community member. We all have to lean forward. We live in an area that's prone to it. The responsibility isn't just unique to us. It's really all of Western United States. Everybody has to do a lot of the work that Eric was talking about at that parcel level. Because once you lose that first home, once that first home goes and it turns into an urban conflagration, it's so much harder for those firefighters to stop it, because the ember production that comes from a house is a lot more than what you might get with the well-treated vegetation from the work that they're all doing. So we really constantly stress in emergency preparedness. It's everybody a community effort, and it goes to the same for the mitigation level too.
Thank you.
Yeah, all that, and compared to LA, right, it is very different, right, as far as eco-regions of California, fuel type, the connectivity of the landscape, right, those steep, inaccessible canyons with 20-foot tall chaparral and chamise type shrub vegetation. It's a little bit different, than our forests here. Of course, when we have our overgrown, overstocked, unmanaged forests with an understory of brush and fir trees, it starts to look pretty similar. But it's different. And I think, something we can shine our light on is that, we saw what happened in the Dixie Fire north of us, in the Caldor Fire south of us. Those were fuel-driven fires, right? So you had sustained kind of average fire weather, some extra windy days, but they were really topography and fuel-driven fires. It was that connected, untreated, unmanaged forest landscape that drove that fire behavior. But the communities that had put in the work, like South Lake Tahoe with fire response and 20 to 30 years of the Tahoe Fire and Fuels team working to address community risk, there was positive outcomes in certain pockets of those fires. So I think there's good examples locally, both north of us and south of us, of what we can do to accept that community disaster sequence that I started my presentation with, that wind, fuels, weather, and topography all lines up and it turns into that 1% or 0.1% anomaly event. The suppression system will be overwhelmed, and it's going to come back down to what has the community done to set our community up for success. So I think we can look at lessons learned and really drive forward, working from the individual home out, and then see all the efforts that we have going on working from the forest, tying back into the communities.
Yeah, John.
I want to add one thing too, and please tell your friends, which there can be a misnomer that we allow fires to burn. The Tahoe National Forest Plan, which is kind of similar to a county's general plan, our land and resource management plan expressly states that we will suppress all fires. So we do not even have an option in terms of our guidance to allow fires to burn. All fires are to be suppressed on the Tahoe National Forest. Now, where we choose to engage on that for firefighter safety, maybe there's some space there, but it doesn't change the fact that we're actively looking where and how best to suppress a fire at the smallest size.
Can I add something to that real quick?
Absolutely.
And I think, I forget who quoted it, Winston Churchill. If we don't remember our history, we're bound to repeat it. Does everyone know today is the 24th anniversary of the Martis Fire, Father's Day, 2001? And it's a perfect example. It's probably the largest fire closest to home for all of us. And just where we've come since then with our water districts, our water supply, our community education, our defensible space, coming together for meetings like this. As long as we remember where we were, continue to move forward with what we're doing in all capacities, and know and remember that I think we're going to be better off. We are light years ahead of where we were, and it is apples and oranges, Southern California, and the town of Truckee and the Mortis Valley, but we can learn a lot from all the history. They had that same history in 1960 with the Bel Air fire, and a lot of that came out of there. So just remember, and we do have that history to learn from right here as of today.
Great, thank you.
So you guys did that was an awesome presentation today, so thank you. We're wrestling as a homeowners association with the responsibility that we have to enforce some of the things to get zone 0, because if our neighbor's house goes down, then our houses go down, to your point, Eric. So the responsibility from the HOA versus the what is Truckee doing to enforce, like how are we gonna get more people from 1 out of 10 homes that are that are home hardened in the way that we think is going to be successful to suppress a fire to 5 out of 10. And, is there thinking behind a little more stricter reinforcement of those things besides just please do it, it's in the good interest of our community? Are you looking at the homeowners associations like the Martis, the Lahontan, and ours to enforce some of those things and to be a little bit more involved in how we look at our community? Just maybe your thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think it's something we grapple with, a lot. I think that the responsibility is the community responsibility, right? Everyone that owns a house here, lives here, work here, play here, like you really do got to put the responsibility back on the community. We need to work together. We need to be a community again, right? Talk with our neighbors, work with our neighbors. And then there's various laws and authorities having jurisdiction and responsibility to enforce codes. And where we're at is Truckee Fire has an older defensible space ordinance, 2012. At the state level, CAL FIRE and Board of Forestry, they're working right now to update Zone 0 regulations. So provide the regulations and codify those Zone 0 requirements by the end of this year. So my goal is that this winter is a winter that we really work to communicate and grapple with an updated local defensible space ordinance. See where our data lands us in this re-inspection cycle, right? How much work is our community buying into and proactively getting done? And then starting to shape, based off the needs of our community, where do we need enforcement to get the work done. Right, like Tahoe Donner has been wildly successful. They started their defensible space program in 2008, and then starting these last couple of inspection cycles, they've gone to strict enforcement. 1,000 homes a year are going to be compliant with Tahoe Donner's defensible space CCNRs. No ifs, ands, or buts. And they do their inspections, get the work done, and by the end of the year, they had 1 out of 1,000 properties that didn't comply and had to go through a formal hearing and possibly into finding it later. So there is ways we can all work together, right? Like Truckee Fire providing capacity to help get inspections. HOAs can adopt more strict standards and enforce them locally. So there's definitely, it'll vary by community and appetite that community and community leaders have, but we can definitely find ways to work together and either get the work done proactively or wait for 8 out of 10 homes to have the work done and the last 2 to have to get enforced.
Yeah, and just real quick, I'll add too that the Truckee Fire through Measure T has a lot of great incentive programs. The town of Truckee, as part of the next work plan, is really going to look at updating a lot of our codes to align with the wildfire risk, and to back that up, provide maybe some more substantial incentive programs to get some of those larger dollar items which are really costly. Maybe it's replacing windows, roofs, sidings, things like that that are just almost prohibitively expensive to help, be more of that carrot side of the carrot stick,
I mean, a big carrot is fire insurance, but I know that's really hard for us to go work with fire,
Great conversation.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's give a big round of applause, but also just a big thank you to Truckee Fire, the town of Truckee, National Forest Service, and CAL FIRE, and the presenters that were here today. Thank you for everything that you guys do. It's essential and appreciated. All right, stump speeches. Do we have any stump speeches? Anybody want to tell us about what they've got going on? Yes.
So just some event promo coming up for anyone who wants to dive deeper into fire readiness. There's an event being planned for Wednesday, July 9th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the Truckee Rec Center that the Eastern Regional Firewise Coalition is organizing in collaboration with Truckee Fire, the Community Foundation, COAD, Tahoe RCD, SWEP, and the Contractors Association. So we'll have some of the usual suspects speaking. Eric and James will be speaking. We'll have someone talking about the Middle Truckee River Watershed Forest Partnership as well. But there will be an opportunity for the bulk of the event to mill around tables. So there will be local nonprofits, and organizations talking about fire readiness and wildfire resilience work, as well as defensible space and home hardening contractors. Those of you in the room who I heard are in the home hardening and defensible space areas, if you're interested in tabling or anything, please come and talk to me. And would love to have folks there. And then another opportunity to go deeper into knowing your zone and evacuation preparedness and all of that. We'll have a virtual event on Friday, July 11th at 12 p.m. So those events can be found on our website, ttcf.net. Anyone interested can also email me, erica@ttcf.net. That's ERIKA at ttcf for Truckee-Community-Foundation.net. Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. Anybody else? Yes. Well, yeah, sorry. One's behind, one's in front. You go.
I just wanted to let people know that Next Level Leadership, the leadership program that I have put together with the Chamber of Commerce here, is beginning in September. It's an 8-month program. Leaders from the area in perhaps your organization who are looking for more interpersonal leadership skills, and I'm talking about how to give feedback effectively, how to run meetings effectively, how to motivate teams, how to deal with all those personalities and so on, understanding your own leadership style. Those are the kinds of things that we work on with this leadership program. This is meant to be the next step from the other leadership program that exists here. This is for people who already have people, employees who are reporting to them. On your tables are QR codes for the landing page, just so you can learn more about it and where you can register and so on too. I'll be around if you want to chat about it, and think if perhaps someone on your team could use a little bit of leadership training. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Amber with Silent A Photography. I almost said something else. I'm running a special for, right now is the time to do your family portrait, so I'm running a special. It's $300, you get 30 images. So that's what I'm doing right now. And if you have a nonprofit, or if you're doing a fundraiser or a silent auction, I would also love to donate a family portrait session. So that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes.
I don't know the boundaries of the stump process, but
soon to find out.
Yes. So I've been a Tahoe Donner resident for 4 years, but just moved here full time, and I just took over this fire defense company. And I don't know exactly how to connect all the dots, so let me just use this stump piece to let probably Eric and others know. My company makes a paint that just goes on your house, and it withstands 3,000 degrees, and you're left standing even when the wildfire rips through your neighborhood. And we've saved homes in Palisades, Malibu, Bel Air. So I don't know how that fits in with defensible space. But if 1 out of 10 is compliant, you know, we just go right on the home and protect it when embers are flying, and, you know, you got eucalyptus bushes and, you know, it's erupting. There is the zone 0, and there's solutions for that. And, you know, I've got calls in for the Forest Service guy to make us WUI compliant, and talk to the California fire marshal. Long story short, I'd love to figure out how, for my own community in Truckee, we can figure out how we feather into all the work that's been done.
Got it. All right. Well, the stakeholders are here, so yeah, go up and introduce yourself. All right. Yes, Kathleen.
As you all know, we've got a Truckee library. New Truckee library is going to be coming to town. We hope construction could begin as early as 2027. It's going to require a huge community input in order to be able to make that happen, though. I would like to say one of the key features of this community, this library, will be an emergency resource center. So in addition to books and all the wonderful things that libraries provide, another one of the wonderful things that library provides are emergency resource centers for the community. So with that, I would like to, anyone who's interested, please take a Truckee Library Love sticker. Put it on your water bottle. It's better than some stickers in the eyes of some. Put it on your water bottle. They're here for you. And please join the community in bringing this new library to Truckee. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Yes, Jim.
That reference was, I was given by the library group a sticker that says size matters. And then in small print it said Truckee Library. My daughter peeled it off. That ain't happening.
Thanks, Jim. I'm not sure. You just pushed the bounds of the stump speech, so remember that. Okay.
Could I have one more?
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, thanks to the Community Foundation and the Airport District for really leaning into this wildfire space, right? Their Forest Features program and the Airport District making $2 million available now 2 years in a row to local fire districts. It's really provided a good boost in capacity, funding, getting more done, and filling gaps, right, where we run into political boundaries or things like that. So for those of you that didn't know, great partners that are helping fill some funding and fill in this space and helping us all get more done. So thanks for all that.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Ruth.
What? No. So I just wanted to say the Truckee Chamber is working on the Truckee 4th of July parade, and registration is open online, go to truckee.com. But most importantly and appropriate to today's discussion, our Grand Marshals this year is our local and regional fire service projection.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right.
And then you have a mixer you want to mention.
Oh, yes. Our June mixer will be next Wednesday, June 25th at Rainbow Lodge up in Soda Springs. And they have done a lot of work up there, and they're trying to open more to the public. And so we would love for everybody to come up to Rainbow Lodge next Wednesday, the 25th, from 5 to 7. Yeah.
Thank you.
Free food and drink.
All right. Okay, without further ado, we'll do our door prizes. We'll start with a return ticket to Good Morning Truckee, and that will go to Jim Porter. Jim? I know you wanted the hat, but you got the ticket.
I'll swap for the hat.
All right, Brent.
Actually, I get in because we're a sponsor.
All right.
So
we'll go back to the well here, and we'll do Jeff Nye. All right. Okay, up next we have this very patriotic plant here. Jim, this also has your name on it. You won't turn this one down.
I don't turn anything down, really.
All right, Eric with Truckee Fire. Don't plant it in zone 0, though.
This might be allowed in zone 0 for now.
Okay, yeah. All right, we have a leather-bound journal here, and that will go to Tom Nill of Sugar Bowl. And last up, a Truckee, California Sasquatch hat. Sorry, Jim, your thing's already out, so I can't win. This is going to Susan Giacobazzi.
You know what? I won the hat last time.
Oh, really? So you're just on that. Should I go?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Here we go. Too many hats. It's a Truckee problem. All right. Kathleen Egan.
All right.
Yeah, seriously. Wins every time. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate you being here for the June Good Morning Truckee, and we'll see you not in July because we don't have one, do we? Oh, we do have one in July. All right. New faces. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
Nice to meet you, too. Yeah, nice to meet you.